I've known Blair for many years now, and I can tell you he's had an insatiable appetite for learning. He's had a long and successful career in the airline industry, which has allowed him to travel to 146 countries, not cities, this is countries. After he retired from the airlines and closed that chapter of his life, he was pursued by the University of Pittsburgh to teach business strategies, where at this time that's where he's employed. He's been my favorite tour guide and my own personal travel agent, and he's my son, Blair.
Okay, let's get started. I went to Lehigh University, and then I went to, I did banking, which you'll see in a second, and I didn't really like banking. I actually was working on Wall Street, and I ultimately decided I didn't want to earn all that money. I needed to go to a less prosperous field. So I went back to Harvard Business School to get the lowest job offer out of my section at business school. Before that, I was in banking at JP Morgan and then PNC. We jumped ahead. Oh. So I already told you I was in banking and I didn't want to make all that money, so I went to aviation. I spent 30 years in aviation, doing things that we're going to talk about bit by bit, designing route structures. This is United Airlines' domestic route structure. Those aren't the flights. Those are simply where they fly. Many of those, they'll have 2, 4, 10 departures each direction. So, and this is a little harder to see, but this is their international. And there's Caribbean and South America is so detailed that they had to have a breakout. So it's a very, very complex world to design a route structure for a large airline. And also worked on fleet issues. How many planes do we have? Of what type? How many sections in each plane? Do you have first class? Do you have business? Do you have premium economy? Do you have economy plus? Do you have basic economy? So you have to make all those decisions. And pricing. Eventually went into pricing as well. This is it's in dollars because it's American Airlines selling the British Airways nonstop, which I worked hard to get the British Airways nonstop into Pittsburgh. She didn't want it. The woman who runs the airport really didn't want it, and we kind of went round and round and round. And eventually moved into crew scheduling. Crew's the second largest expense of an airline. It doesn't seem very interesting, but it's very complex. Making sure that you have crew where you need them. Different aircraft have different crew needs, and if one gets sick, the plane can't go. It could be stuck in Auckland, New Zealand. So I worked for United at first, and then I worked for American because I couldn't afford to pay my student loans that I talked to you about. So American gave me $7,000 more, so I moved to Dallas. And then when I retired, my best client asked me to come and help for 2 years on an interim basis, and that's Qatar Airways. You might not know who they are, but they are. Anybody ever fly Qatar Airways?
My son.
Do you like it? Yeah. Have you flown them? Someone back there? Did you like them?
Yes.
Yeah. So United is now the largest airline in the world again. It was when I was little, and it's now, American is number 2. Qatar Airways, when I started working with them 20 years ago, they were maybe 50, and they are now number 6 in the world. And number 6, right, probably 100 miles away from Iran, right across the, well, to them it's the Arabian Gulf. If you're a Persian, it's the Persian Gulf. So after that, I did a lot of consulting, first for a company called Accenture. Then I worked at British Airways, US Airways, Star Alliance, Air France, United. And then I spent 13 years at the strategy house that does the most aviation, Oliver Wyman. And just some of the companies I worked for, Air China and Aeroflot in Russia before things got real bad, Virgin Australia, Air Canada, Air France, etc., Emirates. As Mom said, I'm now at University of Pittsburgh suffering with all the millennials and Gen Zs. Yeah, that's a whole different lecture. As she says, I have lived in 6 countries and 3 continents, short time in Japan, short time in China, on and off in Qatar, which you can barely see there, quite a long time in and out of London, and a little over 4 years in Switzerland, and lived all over the US. I have worked in 31 countries, I reckon, on 6 continents, and as she mentioned, I've been to 146. So I have moved around. So, to the lecture. How do airlines develop these? This is where it gets technical. Don't let me get too technical. I'm not going to go through this, but we're going to break it apart, right? Giant simulation models. Mathematical models are simply pretend worlds in a computer, right? And we're going to use an example of weather. So if there's a real world problem is, what will be the future weather? And we use computer modeling, mathematical modeling, to try to predict the weather. So we gather lots of information around past weather, right? What happened with different temperatures, what happened with different barometric pressure, what happened with different humidity and sunlight profiles, and different altitudes, places that are close to water, places close to mountains, places close to the desert, so many different things. And you put all of those things and the related weather into a computer, and the computer sees patterns. When we have this barometric pressure with this altitude, this happens. When we have this humidity in the desert with this temperature, this is what happens. Again, you put that all into the computer, and the model, and with AI, the real benefit of AI is it sees patterns that we can never see. Old computers see lots of patterns that the humans can't see, but AI can see even more patterns of when these 5 things happen, this weather event happens. Right, we're still talking about weather. And I'll pivot over to airlines. So we feed a model of scenarios into the computer, and it will forecast the weather based on everything it's learned from the past, right? So inputs. Let's say we have a location that's coastal northeast. Late January, 25 degrees, strong cold air coming in from Canada. Humidity is moderate, but is climbing with ocean moisture. And put it in the computer, based on all its past experience, it's going to predict what's going to happen. Anybody know what's going to happen in this little scenario?
Snowstorm.
Snowstorm. What's it going to be called?
Nor'easter.
It's a nor'easter. You guys like weather, right? I know seniors like weather. Actually, Pomeroy's like weather. My wife always says, my children are like, why does Dad always talk about the weather? Intense snowfall, high winds, yes, a classic nor'easter. So let's move it over to the airline business again. How do we develop these complicated route structures? And they're wildly complicated. Maybe I'll go off script a little bit. Even considering a hub, United's, let's say their hub at Chicago, they have waves of planes coming in from one direction, and then they go out in waves on the opposite direction. So in Chicago, let's say you have an 0800 arriving from the east. So you have Providence and Syracuse and Buffalo and Rochester and Harrisburg and Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and Roanoke, blah, 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 all coming in. It arrives at 0800. 30 minutes later, they all go west. So 0830 to the west to Sacramento and Reno and Medford, Oregon, and Denver and Salt Lake City and Eugene and on and on and on, right? But you may have 7, 8, 9, 10 of these waves, right? Each direction, kind of a 0800 west, and then maybe a 0800 east. And so when you're making network changes, maybe you decide that you only want 8 waves instead of 10, or you want to go from 10 to 11. And so you have to move around and everything. It's extremely complex. So we use these models just like the weather forecaster to make these. So first thing we do is we fill the computer model with how many people are expected to fly between any two commercial airports in the world. Basically, we put all the passenger demand in the world into the computer. Does that sound insane? There are something over 500 city pairs. Most of them are not nonstop. So I think I have an example here. Florence, Italy to Hamilton, Bermuda, right? How about Yakima to Colombo, Sri Lanka? Key West to Denpasar in Indonesia, which is Bali. I mean, these things can get very, very granular. Altoona to Bombay, Mumbai. Yeah, there are 500 some thousand of them, and they all have history of who's flying, and you'll try to create, maybe this economy is growing faster, so if we're gonna do it for 5 years, we'll maybe add some growth, or if it's shrinking, or if there likely will be more service, and then people may fly to these airports more often in the future. So you start with a file of 500,000 plus city pairs. That's insane. That's all that people do at these big airlines. Maybe 5 or 6 or 7 people. That's all they do is create these files of where people fly and where they're going to fly. Right. Again, you can interrupt me at any time. Then we attach fares to those, because sometimes people pay a little money to go long distance and a lot of money to go short distance, so we can't do it on a distance basis. We give the computer past information on the past consumer behavior, so the models can see patterns in purchase behavior. This gets a little complicated, but just like the weather, how important this is the most important. These, in marketing terms, these are called purchase drivers or buyer values. What do people most value in buying an airline ticket? And you would say price, but that's not ever the right answer, because the most important thing is you are flying where they want to go, right? You can get a cheap flight, but if you don't want to go to Detroit Metro Airport, right? So the first thing that's most important that the model has seen over time is how important is a nonstop versus connecting versus a double connecting versus a triple connecting, right? Yeah, and there's a lot of triple connecting, right? If you are going to the back country of, well, I was in Bhutan about a year ago, and you have to triple connect to get to Paro, Bhutan. So the model will say the nonstop always is worth more, but how much more? And over time, we see in the past how people make their purchasing behaviors, how much people prefer the nonstops in different markets. And so we have that historical, so that goes into the model. And other factors, time of day, people prefer certain times of day, certain times of day of week. They prefer certain aircraft types, not big. Most people have no idea what aircraft they're flying, but enough folks do that the models have picked it up. And if you put a nice wide body on a flight, more people will fly that than a little puddle jumper. So all these purchase drivers are in the model. How preferred are different airlines at different points of sale? If you're in Atlanta, you are going to be a Delta flyer, and so you'll probably prefer out of Atlanta to fly Delta. If you are out of Newark, you're going to fly United. If you're out of Dallas, you're either going to fly Love Field with Southwest, and so people are partial based on where their point of sale is. And there are probably 25 other factors that I don't want to bore you, but so the model has that in over time based on past behavior, and we take a schedule, and a giant schedule and we then change the schedule and see, is the change good or bad? I'll give you an old example of something that was profound for American Airlines. They used to have a San Juan hub, right, that would service the Caribbean and some of of South America. And they decided to say, what if we move that hub to Miami? So you take a schedule of all the flights for a year, and you know the economics of that because you maybe it was historical, or you could just run it through the model, and the model would have estimated what that's worth. And then you cut out, it's almost like you take a couple pieces out of the puzzle and replace them with a different 4 pieces of the puzzle, and now see which is better. Is it prettier with the original pieces? Is it prettier with the old pieces? What are you thinking?
What's pretty mean? Money?
Money.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to make this a little more accessible, but I guess I'm not. Which is more profitable? So in this case, they cut out from the schedule the San Juan hub, which they had had for a long time, and they put in the Miami hub. This is all just simulation. It's not real. It's like we're going to say what happens if the temperature and the barometric pressure and the humidity is this, what would happen, kind of scenario playing. And so we did that, an American, and moved it to Miami only in the computer, and it was wildly more profitable, partly because Miami is much better located. It's a much bigger local market. That means there's tons of service to the West Coast, tons of service to Europe. It was a really no-brainer, but it was modeled, right? And the model said, do it. And I was saying here, run the new scenario through the computer. So we put in the original network schedule. We had the baseline of San Juan, Puerto Rico, and then we changed the schedule and stick that in. And the model will tell us how will AA's revenue, cost, and profit change. And of course, I've already said to you, it was much more profitable to move San Juan to Miami. So we closed San Juan and opened Miami, and now Miami is probably 15 times bigger than San Juan ever was. Not only does the model tell you about American, with Miami and San Juan, it tells you what will be hurt or helped in the American hub, right? Maybe San Juan, overall that American Airlines did better with Miami, but certain parts of American Airlines hub structure might have suffered, right? So some places are winners, some places are losers. But more interesting for you is the model tells us who else in the competitors, who's going to win and who's going to lose. If American gets better going to the Caribbean and South America with Miami, somebody is going to lose in the competitors, right? It'll tell you, is United going to win or is United going to lose? Is Delta going to win or is Delta going to lose? And if Delta loses, where's it going to lose? Well, it's going to probably lose out of Atlanta, right? Right. So it's kind of interesting. It basically simulates the entire. When you make one move, it stimulates the entire world. Even is British Airways, Iberia in Spain, it will tell you who wins and who loses for any type of change. Same thing with fleet. How do you decide what type of aircraft, 2,000 regional mainline aircraft, how do you decide which ones you have? And how do you decide what cabins to put in? Do you have all economy, or do you have a first class, business class, premium economy? How do airlines make those decisions? Same type of modeling. But let me stop here. Anybody head spinning over the simulation of network changes? Right? You just take a puzzle, cut out a few pieces, and stick alternative pieces in and see if the puzzle is better, more profitable. It's really kind of interesting. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to say, the only people that lose are us. Like for instance, when they cut out the one way, they put in that we have to go from here down to Atlanta to go here. I mean, it's just like crazy to me.
Yeah, but that was all modeled, right? And the model said, what's your first name?
Min.
Yeah, Mim. We've spoken before, Mim. Does the model care about Mim? Not a bit, Mim. I care about you, but the models don't care about you, Mim. Right? And the models say that there was just, there was not enough traffic, and there was a better scenario. What do you think, Mom?
I want to know who decides how much space is between the seats.
Why are we so uncomfortable?
Ask me that at the question and answer. Yeah.
Leave us enough
Yeah,
time.
yeah. I'm actually a little over halfway, so. So how we do the fleet is, so you take a schedule, again, let's say it's a United schedule of, where they're gonna fly for a year, what times, this, 2 flights a day from Pittsburgh to San Francisco, 2 flights from San Francisco to Pittsburgh. Yet there are, 7,000, 8,000 of these a day. And you load all potential aircraft options into the computer. You tell the computer that you were a kid in a candy store. There's every type of candy in there. And you ask the model, based on our schedule, could be a future schedule, what kind of candy do you want, right? Now each candy comes with different profiles, right? Each plane has a different cost to buy it, but also to operate it. They have different fuel economies. They have different range and speed, right? So you're not going to fly a 737 to Moscow or to Tokyo. And planes are different speeds. You probably think they're all the same speed, but they probably vary by 150 mile per hour, which impacts a pilot cost and crew cost. And so you put all that in. They have different seats. In fact, you could put different seat options into the model. You could give it aircraft A and make it all economy, and aircraft B and make it 4 sections. Different cargo capacity. So you put that in the model, and you load the schedule in with the original schedule and the baseline forecast with what the current aircraft you have, and the model based on what's best for the company. If it could move, of course it takes forever to change your fleet. Most of these planes will fly for 25, 30 years. So this is just your dream team. The model will compose you a dream fleet because you let it pick whatever it wants in unlimited numbers. Again, your fleet will never look like that because it takes 25 years to change your fleet over. But at least you'll have a sense of, wow, this model wants me to have more narrow body planes. This one model wants me to have more wide body planes. This model wants more cargo capacity, or it prefers the aircraft with more first class or more business class. It basically gives you the dream team. Pricing. Do you think we're going to use computers for pricing? Oh yeah. Airlines have been collecting consumer behavior on pricing for 50 years, since the beginning of mainframe computers, 60s and 70s. They know what causes demand. If Halloween is on a Thursday, what does that mean? If Easter is on a Sunday, which it always is, but if it's in March versus April, and where is it in the season? 50 years of, each of these airlines now has about 100 million passengers a year. So you're talking about billions of records of how people fly. And so they can now accurately predict the price sensitivity. How many people are price sensitive of different ways. And when I'm talking about this, sometimes there are up to 36, 38 groups here. But it can identify different segments of price sensitivity and the size of those groups and their buying behavior, where they travel, when they travel, how long they stay, how often they don't show, no shows, how often they change their tickets. Right. These models are incredibly accurate. I mean, really, really accurate. We're talking 1 to 3% error rate. You can overbook a flight 5 seats over, and it almost always gets it right. So you put all that 50 years of insight. Sorry, I've got my slides mixed up. Okay, so what was I saying? Based on the schedule with aircraft, the airlines will take this knowledge and they will say there's a group that will pay virtually anything, but there are only 5 people. So if we have a 100-seat plane, the first inventory is allocated a future flight with 100 seats, and they predict that 5 people will pay $10,000 to go to London on the British Airways London nonstop. Those are the first folks that get allocated inventory to sell. And then they'll go to the next group. These people won't pay $10,000, but they will pay $8,000, and there are 10 of them. So then we allocate 10 seats to them, and they have a no-show rate of 20%. So we'll sell 12 seats, knowing that we'll get 10. And we'll keep going down the plane, allocating inventory until there's no more demand or the plane is full. If the plane is full, we may not actually take the most price-sensitive customers. Again, there could be 38 of these little buckets. And it's all guessing ahead of time. The airlines don't want to take the cheap, as the British say, the cheap and cheerful group. They don't want to take you if you're on right? And they'll only take you is if they don't think all the people who will pay a lot of money, there's just not enough of those and they're extra seats. What are you thinking back there?
How much does the origin of the reservation influence those decisions?
I'm coming to that.
Okay.
That's a good question. You obviously know something about this topic. You know something about this topic, don't you? Oh, you're talking about point of sale or point of purchase?
Yeah, well, I've done Priceline, I've called the airlines. We used to do the travel agent. I just wondered which one.
Yeah, I'm going to mention that in a second, right? Yeah. So I'm glad you said it. So the airline keeps high fare passengers from using. So for this to work, you have to keep the different groups, segments we call them. You have to keep them segmented from each other, fenced, gated, quite nasty. It's called price discrimination, right? How do you keep the people who will pay $10,000 from a Kellogg's cornflakes box top and $200 fares, right? Because you have to be very, very clever on how to keep them fenced off, or the $10,000 people will become the $200 people. So how do we do that? We look for behaviors that separate the groups, and one of them is point of sale or point of travel. Both of those, because sometimes people realize what's happening. So let's give you some example of these. These you might recognize as why airlines have restrictions. The restrictions are fare fences to keep people from not getting to the cheap fares. The most effective one is kind of the time restriction. Low fare passengers buy early. And so the airline uses advanced purchase to keep business folks who make late decisions from being able to get those fares, right? I remember when I thought I was going to Rio de Janeiro or Sao Paulo, and instead I ended up in Zurich 2 days later, right? So business people who pay the big fares, they don't know. So what you do, you put in advanced purchase. High fare passengers need changeability and refundability. Again, they don't know. And if you make it non-refundable and they cancel, they're not going to be out that money, so they'll always take the flexible fare. Flexible fare, high or low? Flexible fare is high. Most leisure folks, they don't change their itineraries, so they don't need that changeability and refundability. So you put changeability and refundability with either penalties or you just don't, you make them non-refundable, and that keeps the business people who pay a lot from grabbing those fares. Business people want to be home for the weekends. This is the one that most people hate. Really an effective fence. The Saturday night stayover, right? Business people don't want to, they want to be home when the work week is over. So they put the Saturday night stayover. If you don't stay over a Saturday night, you have to pay a much higher fare. That's a fare fence, right? And the final one I'm going to have is, and I think this goes to your point, if you can price tickets purchased in richer areas are priced higher than tickets sold in poor area. You can fly from JFK, you know what JFB is? Say it. What's that? JFK is Kennedy. How about JNB? Johannesburg. Right? Yeah, there's a I think there's 2 nonstops in that. I've taken that flight quite a bit actually. If you buy that ticket in JFK, you will pay more for the same ticket, even with the same structure, than you would if you bought it in Johannesburg. Because they realize the people in JFK are richer than the people in Johannesburg, South Africa. Right? That's a point of sale. Sometimes it's point of travel wherever you start traveling. Some clever people, and you know this, you can kind of work around this with a VPN and try to not let the systems know where you are. If you're buying a ticket in Greenwich, Connecticut, I think you got to move yourself to Appalachia. Right? Have the computer tell the systems that you're in Appalachia and you'll get a cheaper fare.
Really?
I'm being a little cheeky. But the overall thing is, right, there's a lot of discrimination based on, let's say, buying something in Amsterdam to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, right? On the nonstop, if you bought it in Dar es Salaam, you would pay probably much less than if you bought the ticket in Amsterdam. I don't think I have too many more. Oh wait, just a mini case study I give my students. Just the power of price segmentation. Again, you can call it price discrimination because it's partly price discrimination. Though the airlines will tell you it's a slightly different product because they hold the seat for you. If we have an 100-seat plane, 85% full, and we charge $500 each, our revenue is going to be $42,500. Again, remember and remind, you could have, at a big plane, 38 different categories. We're going to only talk about 3 here, so I'll be done in about 90 seconds. Let's segment, and we're going to say still only 85 people, and it's a single economy, so we're not going to change fuel burn because it's still 85 people. We're not going to change cater because it's all economy. But we know that certain people, we can segment them with fare fences, and we can get 20 seats at 900, and then reduce the folks that get the cheap fares 500 to 65. Now our revenue has gone from 42,500 to 50,500. Do we have any additional cost? No additional cost. All additional profit. All that revenue is profit. There might be a little commissions if you go through a travel agent, but let's assume that it goes directly. Let's do it one more time. We're going to take, of the 20 seats at 900, we're going to take 5 of those and make them $1,500 walk-up fare. If you saw the British Airways one night, they had a walk-up fare one way to London of $12,000. I mean, people buy those. They do. They're there. After 50 years of collecting data, a one-way trip, nonstop, that's a walk-up fare. You will pay $12,000 and $2,500 in economy for a one-way. So if we take 5 people and charge them $1,500 for walk-up, and then 15 seats at 900 and still 65 seats at 500, now our revenue is $53,500. We've got up $11,000. No more people, no more cost. So All that $11,000 is all extra profit for price discrimination. Is that hard to do? 50 years of data? Hugely hard. It's extremely sophisticated. So it is called price discrimination. People don't like that term, but it is price discrimination. So I have one more slide and then I'll take your questions. I'll just say it's just very, very difficult. And hopefully that gives you a little background of the complexity. Do you have a question?
I was gonna say, you do have some more expenses for those people, because you're giving them a good meal and free booze.
No, this scenario was all economy.
Oh.
In this
okay.
scenario here. But you saw, if you go down the beginning of the presentation, in fact, let me go to this. Because let's just,
You're gonna get somebody to pay $1,500 for an economy seat?
this is a real screenshot. This is a real screenshot. It's about a year old. It's American Airlines selling the British Airways nonstop because I didn't want it in pounds. I wanted it in dollars. Look that's a walk-up fare in the main cabin. That's economy. That's a walk-up fare, one way, of $25.10. There are probably people in that same cabin, and if they book late, do you think they're getting the middle seat? Of course they're getting the middle seat in economy, because all the other seats were taken. So you're gonna get a middle seat if you buy it 5 hours in advance, and if you buy the return, you paid $5,000 to fly in economy with somebody next to you paid $600 round trip. Price discrimination, hugely effective.
What do you think about Southwest giving up that tiered thing that they always had, which I always
You mean the boarding?
The boarding, yeah. I mean,
Well, it just so happens the guy that runs Southwest was my kind of partner, and we worked side by side for at least 5 years, close, Andrew Watterson. When I was at United, my cube touched a vice president of pricing, who then went to India and started Indigo. 350 planes later, he's a billionaire. And now he's an activist investor on the Southwest board, Rakesh Gangwal. He has basically fired the past CEO, who was chairman, and taken the current CEO and said, basically, you are only doing media. And given my buddy, who's the number 2 guy there, it runs all of strategy, all of revenue, and all of costs. He runs the entire airline, 76,000 folks. Basically, the activist investor forced them to do that. But I think it's probably the right thing.
are they making more?
It's too early. Right. The seat assignment just started, I think, the 26th of January, bags in October. The problem here is they had a simple business model that worked for so long until it didn't. And they kept hiring people that liked the business model, and those people just didn't have the skills to refresh. And the Uniteds of the world got better and better and better, and Southwest didn't get better. And so you could see over time their financial performance went from above average to quite a bit below average. That's not Andrew. Andrew's relatively new to the airline.
Flight attendants on Southwest are better.
They are better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. And part of Southwest's problem is they have paid their pilots too much for the productivity. That's always the problem. You want to keep people happy, but if you're not competitive, then you have to raise prices, and then people don't like you, and then you kind of get into a death spiral, kind of like city taxes, right? But I think the answer was right for Southwest. It's not popular. I probably would have done one bag free for a while.
We're suckers.
Yeah. I mean, they fly a lot of city pairs nonstop that, Pittsburgh, Tampa, nobody else is, well, Little Breeze is in that, and nearby St. Petersburg, Allegiant is there, but they're all partial day of week at odd times. So, Southwest is in a lot of city pairs that are unique to them, so I think they'll do fine. Did I completely confuse you? I probably have completely confused you.
No?
What are you thinking, Linda? You want to become an airline pinhead? Yeah. No more questions? What are you thinking?
What about consumer pushback on this stupid, where they make the seats narrower and the pitch smaller, and people who are overweight can't fly?
Oh, that's,
Or
that,
their
mom was
arms.
asking that question. So, when you look at fares roughly, they're, in real terms, well, I think about half of what they were when they were regulation. And so, but also your space is half. So people, and we've gotten heavier, right?
You should have.
But people want cheap fares, they want more for less. And so the airlines, if you want a cheap fare, then you have to give back space so we can take more passengers. It's, I mean, the airlines have historically been the least successful industrial sector since Kitty Hawk. By the way, I used that term the other day, Kitty Hawk, and my students, I have mostly seniors, so they're 21, 22. Maybe the class is slightly bigger than this, the number of people here. I think in my 4 classes, each class, it took me about a minute or two for somebody to guess what the word Kitty Hawk meant.
Oh, no.
I'm serious. We were doing a case at AT&T, and I said something about Ma Bell, and then I thought, I'm going to ask them why Bell, and they said, oh, because the phone has a ringer. Did they know Alexander Graham Bell? Not a one. And then I used this reference to the emperor has no clothes, or the British say the emperor's new clothes. No one knew, except for a Chinese woman in one class, and she says, everyone knows that fairy tale. Evidently not. And in another class, an Indian woman said the same. Everyone in India knows that. But these kids, they don't know any of that stuff. So, yeah, so you want cheaper fares, you have to give back space. People don't like it, but the airlines are doing better because they've been allowed to merge. But they're not, if you look at the relative performance economically of the different sectors, tech, retail, pharmaceutical, they're still quite a bit below average. So they're not killing it comparatively. Who's killing it? Visa and MasterCard, 55% profit margin. United, 7%. Yeah. No more questions? What are you thinking?
What do you think?
Do you have any tips for people who like to get bumped and get free tickets?
You want to be.
What's the best time to fly?
You want to be voluntarily bumped where you get the offer.
I'm tired. I have all the time in the world.
Well, the best way to get bumped, first of all, there's not that much bumping because I've already told you the models are extremely good. I mean, we're talking just a few thousands a year, tens of thousands with 100 million flyers. But people get bumped because they're overbooking. The best way to get bumped is involuntarily bumped is to check in, don't check in until you get to the airport. And if you have international flight, you have to be 60 minutes plus 1, because the international ones will cut off exactly at 60. Yeah, you know that. If you want to be involuntarily bumped, don't check in until the very last second. If you want to be voluntarily bumped, immediately get to the gate and tell them that you're willing if they need it, before they make the announcement. But yeah, I mean, you can look at when people fly, right? Spring break, Sunday night of spring break, people are gonna be bumped.
Monday after Easter.
But even better than that is, the Monday after Easter, right? Or Sunday night after Easter, since they don't have Monday off. What are you thinking?
How does Pittsburgh fall into this hierarchy of the haves and the have-nots and fares?
I think it's, I haven't kept up with that. I think it's probably pretty average. Pittsburgh was, think of all the hubs that closed. This wasn't a Pittsburgh thing. Raleigh closed, Dayton closed, Cincinnati closed, Columbus closed, Memphis closed, Nashville was hubbing at one point, St. Louis, did I say St. Louis, Kansas City, Reno, San Jose. I mean, they're just really a relatively few numbers of hubs, and they've really, really densed them up. What I mean by dense is of these waves, they're called banks, waves of planes. Used to be you'd have 3 banks going each direction in a small hub, but most of these hubs have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 waves each direction. So, but there are not that many of them.
What do you think about putting $1.6 billion into an airport into Pittsburgh when we already had an airport that was working well?
Oh yeah, well, you know, I've gone to battle with her over many things in the newspaper. I don't think she's an honest person at all. I think she's quite dishonest.
Yeah.
Is she intelligent? Yes. Were you completely lied to with this? Really lied to.
Yeah.
But my buddy who's on the Allegheny County Board said that Rich Fitzgerald wanted a trophy project and she wanted a trophy project. But you know, she's been trying to get a job everywhere. She's been applying over at London Heathrow and at Massport in Boston, and I think she's looking for some trophy as well. So what I didn't like about this is they said that the old airport was too big because it's no longer a hub. That is true. But what did they focus on? They focused on the landside terminal. Now, what do we know about a hub and a landside terminal? Do any connecting passengers ever go through the landside terminal? They do not. You see already the untruth of that? So we basically got a new landside terminal because the hub was too big, even though that landside terminal had nothing to do with the connecting piece. Right? You knew that, didn't you? It gets worse. They said that we are not going to pay any more for the terminal than we do today. But just when they were starting this terminal, they had paid off the 25-year bonds. So they had to rehire. It's not 1.6, I think it's closer to 2.
Okay.
So let's say 2. They had to re-borrow that money that could have been used to create new jobs, you know, a tech incubator, or build, you know, do something that was structurally good for the economy. Instead, they wasted it on, well, I'm going to quote Andrew Watterson, who's running Southwest. This is his term, which I just love. Shiny trinkets. This is a shiny trinket. It's actually very pretty. Has anybody seen it? I think it's a huge amount of walking.
They took away the train so you could walk.
Yeah, that's right, Judy. They took away the train so you could walk. Right. And you know, so they've reborrowed the money and they said we're not paying any more because reborrowing the bonds, the debt service is about the same. But that's really quite dishonest because we needed to compare it to where we were after the bonds had fully amortized. And they were saying stuff like, well, if we don't build this $2 billion airport, we're going to have to put $24 million into the train. Well, I mean, the debt services each year is way more than $24 million. That was never, yeah, it's a bad deal. Did the actual terminal need to be truncated? It did. But that's easy, just chop off some of the arms, right? That's not hard. Yeah, it's a travesty, but I think we get that a lot, right? People do things that are good for them and not good for us. But it is pretty. Huge amount of space. I think a lot of wasted space. Did you think that? Just like ball fields of empty space that nobody will ever walk in. Any other? You guys, what do you think of it?
Wasted space.
Wasted space. Did you actually think that, Judy?
I've been there, and there's one huge room that you walk through that is bigger than a ballroom, but nothing's there but a couple chairs.
Yeah, Judy thinks there's this empty space the size of a ballroom and there's nothing there but a few chairs. Yeah, I mean, it is just Yeah, and I mean, even the cost of heating and cooling that thing, it probably is 5 times the size of the old landside terminal. So I guess if we wanted it to be smaller, we didn't succeed. Any other questions? I don't want to keep you too long. I think we're still under an hour. No more questions? Well, thank you for your attention.